Okay, here we are in my fourth part of actual speculation about Halloween Horror Nights 21. Hopefully, this is the last. I was hoping for one video, and it's turned out to be 4. I'm just too long-winded. Okay, I was saying, I know there will be a house set in the years from 1910 to 1919, the second decade of the 20th century, roughly a century ago. That time period has had many interesting things. There was the terrible Spanish flu epidemic. Spanish. There we go again. Maybe that's the house in the parade building. Could be. It could be the house in Doomsday Q, where we have those interesting names, Top Hat, and the row of houses. Could be that. Could be any house, really. But what else happened in that time period? Well, we had World War II, of course. And so some have speculated a house set during the Great War, perhaps maybe featuring flying aces like the Red Baron. I brought that up in one of my speculations. That was just a wild pulling out of my butt, not based on anything I know. But the Red Baron would be a new form of Red Death. Or perhaps an ace from the Ace of Spades that we've seen. Some people have thought that means an icon. I don't know about that, but there's something else, though. That was the first time we had flying aces in a war, by the way. But I mentioned Lovecraft before. I can't help but realize that the majority of Lovecraft's works take place in this time frame. Will there be a Lovecraftian house? Was I right? Even though I didn't know it in my April Fool's gags. There was one thing I speculated, well, not speculated, but joked about in my April Fool's gag that is true. The houses are longer, bigger this year than they were in the past. Some of the locations where scare zones were going to be and aren't being used are not being used, like Plaza of the Stars. What does that mean? Will there be a show in that big stage? That area is clear and open now. They could have a show on that Hollywood Bowl now. They could. That doesn't mean Midnight Syndicate's coming to play there, as some people have speculated, but they could have a show there as well, as, say, over in the Mel's Diner area or on the Beetlejuice stage. We know there'll be another show. We know Brian Brushwood is not coming back. We know that for a fact. Another thing we do know. So that's rather intriguing. Bill and Ted, most likely back in Fear Factor. So, very, very interesting to think about that sort of thing. So I do know about that, as I said, along with the Thing House. Those are two houses, but which house that is, and whether it might be the casino house, although I have a feeling, based on the music selection on the video, which is set in 1930s swing music. It sounds a bit like certain Benny Goodman or what's the other guy? I forget. But whatever it is, it sounds like that kind of music from that era. And so I would think the casino house, if it's set in a time period, would be the 30s rather than, or maybe even later, rather than, say, the 1910s. So the 1910s house is probably not the casino house, but then it might be the possible Spanish house that we may have in the Parade Building. It could be the house in Soundstage 22 or one of the others, maybe the Disaster Q area or the Jaws Q area. Very interesting, very, very mysterious. There's a lot we just don't know. Okay, now, anything else that we know for an absolute fact? I think that's all the actual facts that we know. Now, speculations. Been a lot of oh, well, icons. Let's talk about icons. I do know something for a fact. Now, when the site went live on the 28th of June, we saw, of course, the Dead Man's Hand and the Blackjack draw. We have the Ace of Spades and the Queen of Spades set up. And people noticed these two cards and thought they were very significant and thought maybe it means we're having two icons. Now, the rumor from last year that has been speculated on wildly, somebody, some supervisor told the plague doctors and people in the catacombs that there was a clue to this year's event, 21, in that house. And some have found, trying to find the clue, fixated on a passage that we've always been very interested in death. Death was capitalized. So they seized on that and said that death is going to be an icon. Well, perhaps, but a personification of death implies something that's been done already. The caretaker was revealed to be the personification of death when the icons, Jack was chaos, the director was sacrifice, the storyteller was legend, and the usher was vengeance, and the caretaker was death. So hasn't that been done? They're not bringing the caretaker back. So who would this death be? Remember, I made up the Red Death for my joke. Well, possibly, but then again, there's another possibility. Games of chance makes us think about fate. Fate. The word fate is brought up several times in the wording over in that on the website as well. Fate, chance, luck are all mentioned. So the thought of fate being an icon, because fate was going to be an icon in 2005 when they had the scenario at Universal Studios Florida, which was not used, and instead they had IOA, where they eventually became the storyteller and the Terror Queen once darkness was disapproved. So fate may be back, this female icon, fate, who represented chance and different decisions you make which could affect the outcome. She may be back. If she's back, and chance may be back as well. People notice that the Queen of Spades had a dagger. Queen of Spades holds a flower in the deck of cards, never is holding a dagger. Plus she had red hair. That made people think of the way chance was represented last year with red hair. When she first appeared in 2007, she had brown hair, but she had red hair last year, and she carried a dagger. That and the smirking expression made her think of the Chance character. So perhaps Chance will come back, or perhaps the Queen of Spades itself will be an icon, although some people think that's silly. So perhaps Chance then and Fate will appear as a sort of duo icon. Or perhaps there'll be a third icon representing luck. And the reason people think that, well, first of all, female icon, games of chance, Lady Luck. Luck be a lady. That came to mind. And also the speculation that luck, you see, there is one place in the media release, press release, where luck is capitalized strangely. Why would it be capitalized unless it's meant to be someone's proper name? Is luck an icon? Are there three female icons, chance, luck, and fate? Possibly. I thought about the three fates from Greek mythology, who represent the beginning, life, the drawing out the string, and then the cutting of the string, and how they might fit in with the ideas of chance, luck, and fate. You know, chance, the chance of life, the luck that you have one way or another, and then fate, your end. Possibly, they could do something like that. Or there may only be chance and fate after all. A reason that it may very well be chance and fate alone, representing then death, personified by fate, and chance, whom we've seen before as a counter, is the fact that I have heard now from several different sources, not just one, that a bunch of that for the last 3 weeks, Universal had called in female people to model for sketches of fate and chance to be used as icons for the event. So this is actual confirmation that fate and chance will be at the event, and it may very well be the two main icons for the event, or at least they'll be major characters. If so, there may be two icon houses, as I suggested before, one for chance, one for fate. Maybe fate will be in the casino house and the sprung tent, and chance over in Soundstage 22, or perhaps somewhere else. Again, this is just speculation on my part, but I know chance and fate will be there at the event. Most likely not in the form they took in the past, or they were proposed in the past in the case of fate. That's very interesting. Now, fate brings us to a new possibility. Some have thought that every single house will tie into gambling somehow. That's not likely. The Thing cannot tie into gambling, so that's clearly not going to be the case. But one of the ideas they had back in 2005 with Fate was to have all sorts of things happening so that every time you go to the event it could be different, because whatever decisions you make, what you decide to do, will cause a different outcome. Perhaps you would go into a room in a house and and this character will offer you two different paths to take inside the house. Not a two-run house, so to speak, but rather you go this way into this room or this way into this room. And the outcome of your will be different, because you go through one room and then you don't see the other room unless you go back into the house a second time and go the other way. And then the outcome is different again. That's a possibility. You don't know what's going to happen until you try both. So you have to go back and do things differently each time to have different experiences. There may be, for example, games that you play with that have different outcomes depending on how you play the game. Involved in all the houses one way or another in the event. There's even where someone may be in line and they're forced to go to the back of the line. That was something that was brought up in the VIP room. Now, I don't know if they're going to do that because it would cause complaints, but there could be things that would cause your experience of the house to be a little different every time. And that's a possibility that fate may foretell us. Okay, so I think I've covered most of it. Is there anything else I wanted to cover, or is this it? Let me see. I talked about the icons, and I think I gave all the various information. Oh, there's another thing I want to talk about. Mysterious clue has been passed out to the chosen who have been able to receive this clue. I am not one of them, but I've heard the clue, and it's been allowed to be passed out from a source that nobody knows, and it cannot be revealed for pain of death. But the clue, the mysterious clue, is very enigmatic. It goes, in heaven, the three with whom I would most like to talk are Ian Colfer, Steve Jobs, and Peter Falk. Now, this led all sorts of wild speculation. Ian Colfer wrote Artemis Fowl, and one of the books was set in Antarctica. That's the Thing House. Steve Jobs is Pirates of Silicon Valley. It's going to be a pirate-themed house. You know, that's why there's a skull and crossbones on the ace. Let's see. Peter Falk was Columbo, gangsters, Vegas. That's what they were. But they didn't look at the beginning, in heaven. How can they be in heaven when only one of them is dead? And then you look at those three people, you realize Ian Colfer is alive and well. Steve Jobs has been dying of cancer for the past few years, and Peter Falk just died about a month ago, or just a few weeks ago. So we have living, dying, dead. All three, though, will ultimately meet their fate. Everyone dies. Death is inescapable. Life is impermanent. Plus, heaven caused me to go back and look at those three people and find there's a heavenly connection in all of them. Ian Colfer, in addition to his Artemis Fowl books, wrote The Wish List, which is about a young lady who is dead, and she's trapped in purgatory between heaven and hell, and she has to come back to earth to do good deeds in order to get to heaven instead of going to hell. And there's a demon who is trying to prevent her, a demonic boy dog who's trying to prevent her from Satan to achieve it, so that she ends up burning in hell rather than achieving redemption in heaven. So it has all to do with heaven and hell and the afterlife in that book. Peter Falk was in the movie Wings of Desire, which was set in Berlin, a city that is living, dying, and dead at the same time during the Cold War, when parts of it were all bombed out and not repaired, and the wall split in half between the communist part and the western section, and angels were floating around watching everything, and they couldn't interfere with it, and they couldn't be seen or heard. But one of them, Damiel, somehow Peter Falk's character was aware of his existence, and this guy was trying to communicate with him, and Peter Falk knew he was there and says, "You want to talk to me, I want to talk to you," and he holds out his hand. They shake hands, although he can't feel the hand, but he knows he's there. So an angel from heaven wants to speak with Peter Falk in the movie. Interesting. Secondly, Himmel means heaven in German, right? The name of the movie in German was Der Himmel über Berlin, the sky over Berlin, the heaven over Berlin. Himmel is also the name of Ignatia Himmel from Legendary Truth, which means heaven on fire. Gabriel fell from Legendary Truth, an angel falling. Interesting. Steve Jobs, of course, founder of Apple, was highly inspired by the Beatles, the Apple label, record label from the Beatles. He took that name for his computer company deliberately. He loves John Lennon, and he has used John Lennon in advertising. In the song Imagine, the I in iPhone and iPad, iTunes, can stand for Imagine. He's had that song playing in a lot of his commercials. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. Think about that. Think about the apple with a bite taken out of it. And I've run out of time again.